welcome to the Wellbeing and Career Work podcast. I'm delighted to be chatting with holistic nutritionist. Rachel's credentials include a B.Sc in Human Kinetics, qualified certified nutritional practitioner, and therapeutic nutrition and supplementation, with an approach to wellness from an integrated standpoint, including evaluating environmental factors, emotional stress, and mental well-being, lifestyle habits, and the food we eat. Rachel steers away from the one-size-fits-all method and focuses on the uniqueness of each client in order to uncover the origin of her specific gut issues and or chronic pain. She has travelled down this path feeling lost and unsure what was triggering her symptoms. Rachel is passionate about giving her clients the answers they have been longing for and leading them to the light at the end of the tunnel. And on today's podcast, we'll be chatting about gut health. Very welcome to the podcast, Rachel Kalmar. How are you doing today, Rachel?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Let's get this started. Where are you right now on planet Earth?
I am in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, okay. So we're heading towards, obviously, the winter season. So is it chilly? What's the weather like?
It's been unusually warm, except the past couple of days it's gotten quite cool and a little bit nippy. So we're definitely taking a deep dive now.
Right. So what's unusually warm? I mean, are we talking a couple of degrees or?
No. It was, I don't know if you're Celsius or Fahrenheit, but it was 21 degrees Celsius on the weekend, which is insane.
Right. Yeah. That is insane, isn't it, for November? That's
insane. Yes.
Yeah.
And this morning it was about 5 degrees, which is and feeling like 1. So way more appropriate for the season.
It's weird, isn't it? Because even in Ireland, we're saying, I mean, we've been walking around here in Dublin and I haven't had to wear a jacket. I've been wearing like kind of like a tracksuit kind of jumper and tracksuit bottoms and sneakers or trainers. And it's been unusually, as you said correctly, unusually warm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But I mean, does it get like to and the reason I ask this as well, because obviously with the guests that I chat to around the world, it's like a tourism guide as well. They probably like to know where can we go, what's nice. So what's the favorite part of where you live?
Oh gosh, there's so much. There's so many little unique pockets in the city and outside of the city. I love Collingwood, which is just outside of the city and really great if you're a fan of skiing and snowboarding. And in the winter, great for mountain biking. Downtown core is just fun to explore, walk around, do a little bit of everything. Like it's really, I can't even just pick one thing.
What's the skiing like? Are you a skier?
I used to be a skier. I used to be a snowboarder, and that stopped a long time ago, and I haven't been ever since. I do kind of miss it, but some health things got in the way, and being out in the cold just wasn't working for me at that point, and I was just like, okay, we're done.
Right. And is that a standard thing for Canadians? Is it you're born into skates, ice skates? Is that how it works?
No, I actually started in gymnastics and then we did pick up skating. Like I have a twin sister and an older brother and we all skated. They both did hockey. And so skating is just, I feel like most kids here learn how to skate. There's so many outdoor rinks come the Christmas season that, we have the ability of enjoying. And I think it's like a thing that most people do, but skiing and snowboarding, not so much. I feel there really has to be that interest there if your parents have done it and you kind of witness it growing up.
Well, we have you. I'm gonna go back there a little bit. We have something in common. I have daughters that are twins, and I have a son as well. So, what was that like growing up? I mean, how does your brother feel with the twin sisters? Were you joined at the hip, so to speak?
No, he's older.
Right.
So not by much. My parents had 3 under the age of 2. My sister and I fought all the time.
All right.
Which is kind of sad. And now we're very, very close. And I think, as we got older and we developed our own identities and did our own thing in school. And, she's married. And so it's a very different relationship at this point in our lives.
Right.
And in terms of my brother, I think like we all just kind of like, it's crazy to say we never like all got along well, but now we're all so close. And I have a different relationship with each of them, which is I value a lot.
Right. And that's good. Before we move on to the main topics today, do you know Ryan Reynolds? I always ask this every Canadian.
No, I know of him, but he's B.C., a different province.
But get to know him. He's hilarious. He's very, very funny.
He is hilarious.
He's hilarious.
He has definitely not been on my top things to achieve. That's for sure.
Well, let's talk about your top things to achieve now in a few moments. So I gave a little bit of introduction about yourself. So can you let our listeners know a little bit more about you and your background?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm down in, I guess, I don't know if it's down or up, but I'm in Toronto.
Yep.
I grew up here. I haven't really lived anywhere else except outside of the city for school. And I have been going through a fair share of health issues for a very long time. Likewise with my father and my mom and my sister, we've all kind of been going through crazy things.
Right.
And that's really what led me to do what I'm doing now. Just the trouble getting through school because I felt like I had to always extend things because I never felt good, or watching my dad struggle with ulcerative colitis and being like, there's got to be another way. All shaped my experience and why I'm in this industry now. So I'm not sure if that's really what you were looking for in terms of background, but
you can tell me anything you want in terms of like your educational background, your job. But what we do is now, in terms of, you said health issues. So when did these health issues start? Before you had your interest in kind of moving into that field itself? I mean, you mentioned your dad had ulcerative colitis. I mean, what was that like?
So my mom told me ever since I was little, I've always, been on the toilet or like had stomach issues for forever.
Right.
So that started very young. And there are so many reasons as to why that can be, whether I was on medications as a little girl or we were never breastfed. There's a lot to that, to speak to that. So just always struggled. And then as I got into university, things just got progressively worse. And if it wasn't one thing, it was another. I felt like every day was a different symptom. And I'm sure some of your listeners can resonate with that because I hear it all the time.
Right.
And then just dismissed from my doctors being like, your blood work is normal, when I was like, this is not normal. What I'm experiencing is not normal. And don't make me feel crazy that I have these things going on and that it's all in my head or it's all IBS. Or it's all anxiety and it's all stress. And don't get me wrong, that all definitely plays a part of it.
Yeah.
That's not my why. And so that's really, what led me here, because I have a lot of clients who say the same thing. I'm not being heard. I know there's something going on, but I'm not being heard. And my blood levels are normal, which doesn't always necessarily mean optimal. And with my dad going through ulcerative colitis, so he was the president of a massive company, so just under a lot of stress.
Right.
And he'll never admit it. I will tell you that is likely why, one of the reasons why he ended up with or developing IBD, the inflammatory bowel disease, and one of those being ulcerative colitis. Stress does play a big role. I'm sure there's some pathogens like parasites from traveling, and he's a big raw sushi person, like all these things that can play into that. But, seeing him struggle and go through the steroids and go through the weight loss and from naturopath to doctor to this to that. And it inspired me to figure out, how can we do this from a natural standpoint that's not so streamlined, because everybody is so different. And there's no way that one medication or steroid is going to work for every IBD patient. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I ask, Rachel, just go back to your dad again? When he finished, say, the high profile, high stress job, did his symptoms calm down at all? And I always find this kind of interesting because you hear a lot of people when they stop maybe the high profile job or the stress, or maybe it's the life stress, things begin to calm down. Did they?
So it's interesting you mentioned that. He was able to get it under control prior to retiring because he I believe it's been like 20 something years that he's had it. And then only retired, I think maybe like 5 or 6, 2015. We're almost 10, so 8 years ago.
Right.
But yes, for him right now, things are pretty good. But I will say he did a really fantastic job at, getting himself to a place that felt good for him. Obviously not good enough, but good for him based on where he started while he was still working. But yeah, it's significantly better now that he's literally retired and he lives half the time in Florida and half the time in Toronto. And like, what could be better than that?
Yes. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. The best of both worlds. Yeah.
A little snowbird.
So you mentioned their IBS. So can you explain to listeners, as simplistic as possible, what is IBS?
Well, I consider IBS an umbrella term and a cop-out for I don't know what you're going through.
Right.
And that's my honest truth. I hear people say I have IBS and I feel sad for them. I feel like their doctors have made them believe that this is a lifetime sentence and you need to struggle for the rest of your life and potentially just manage your symptoms. And I don't believe that to be true. There's a lot of root causes for IBS and a lot of ways that you can actually heal, and mark my words, and live a life of that you've, envisioned for yourself, being free of your frustrating IBS symptoms, because they are very frustrating and stressful. So don't ever settle for an IBS diagnosis, because it's just, in my opinion, an umbrella term and a cop-out for not wanting to dig any deeper.
So how then, Rachel, the diagnosis of, so say, let's first start with the symptoms. So what symptoms would the, say, average person experience if they did have IBS?
Gas, bloating, alternating between diarrhea and constipation, or just loose stools and constipation, or there is IBS-C, which is fully just constipation, excuse me.
Oh, you're grand.
Or IBS-D, which is just like full-blown always diarrhea. Those are like your typical signs of someone who is dealing with IBS.
And would they have fatigue? Would they kind of feel like brain foggy as well? Would this be part of it, or dependent as well?
I mean, everyone is so different.
Right.
Everyone is so incredibly different. And we know that the gut is responsible for a lot of things. So sure, if your gut is not healthy and not functioning optimally, a lot of people will experience fatigue and brain fog and headaches and heaviness and all the things that people just, feel like they're just trying to push through every day.
The bloating then, what is the bloating? Obviously, your tummy ends up like a bit of a balloon. So yeah. Why does that start? Is that gas? Is that a reaction from something within the system that's kind of trying to protect you? Because you know yourself, when you if you hit your arm, it swells to kind of protect that area. So to speak.
That's more so inflammation.
Right.
I would say, bloating, distension. It can be different for different people based on what's going on really on the inside. For some people, they're bloating because there's fermentation of food. So if you have low stomach acid and your food just sits in the gut and rots, some people call it gut rot. You're getting these gases that are being produced. Typically, that's what we see. Again, low stomach acid and you can't digest your food. Bloating. For me, I consider bloating just like it can be air, it could be stool because someone's constipated and they're not eliminating. So they're so backed up with stool, or if they're not digesting properly, it's food. Their food is just sitting there.
And why then, Rachel, would they have low stomach acid? I mean, can that be resolved by taking a supplement or a tablet or exercise? It can be. Okay.
I would not exercise, but definitely there's a specific supplement that is stomach acid that you can supplement with. You can add some apple cider vinegar to your diet, which is very acidic. There are a lot of ways to increase stomach acid production naturally. Why someone would experience low stomach acid? Well, there's a ton of factors, stress being one of them. We're in a very high stress environment, a go, go, go. I have to be the best and do the best. And And, that doesn't really set you up for success. If we're not in a nice, relaxed state when we're eating, our body isn't going to secrete as much digestive juices as we would need for optimal digestion. Coffee could decrease stomach acid production. Dairy, believe it or not, can decrease stomach acid production. Like the list goes on and on and on. You'd be overwhelmed if I went through all of it.
So let's overwhelm ourselves a little bit. So what about the high stomach acid then? So the opposite to the low. What's a way of, or is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Terrible. They're both terrible. They're right. Both. You really need an optimal level of stomach acid. So stomach acid is your first line of defense. It really is protection for you. It's your own personal military. And if you don't have enough of it, you're leaving yourself susceptible to pathogens and bacteria and yeast. And at the end of the day, what can turn into chronic illness. And if you have too much of it, you end up with destruction of the esophagus and all the damage that can come with too high stomach acid. So you really do want this, like it's a delicate balance, and you want to make sure you have optimal stomach acid levels. When they're too high, there are ways that you can mitigate that. Often doctors are prescribing what we call as proton pump inhibitors. Yeah. And I would say, if possible, stay away from them because they essentially shut off all acid production. And as I had previously mentioned, like we need stomach acid. We need it. We can end up with osteoporosis without it, iron deficiency because like it's required for mineralizing, ionizing minerals and absorbing them and digesting protein, which is broken down into amino acids. And so it can really just be super destructive. But there are a lot of things that you can do to reduce inflammation and lower stomach acid production if it's too high naturally without shutting off your acid production altogether.
Right. So these PPIs you mentioned, I mean, we're not going to mention the manufacturers, but generally they're the over-the-counter kind of medicines, or as you mentioned, prescribed from a doctor. So yes. Is there information out there? I had read something there before where if you have taken these PPIs, because you've blocked the acid, when you stop taking them, you will increase the acid worse. Is there any information that's true or false, or are you aware of any of that?
I will just be honest in saying I don't 100% know. Right. I know a lot of people do struggle when they get off of them. Yeah. But oftentimes people who are on them don't notice a difference. And that's because they really just haven't addressed the issue, which is 85% of the time low stomach acid. So you're just making the issue worse, not digesting your food. Yeah. Food is then fermenting, producing gas, and it has to go somewhere. So it typically travels back up and you get that heartburn and belching and sometimes vomiting after meals and classic symptoms that a doctor would say, oh, yep, you have acid reflux and here's your medication.
Right. What is the long-term effects if you had too much acid reflux? Or I know you've explained some of the effects, but I mean, can it get worse if you don't control the acid in the stomach, if you have too much?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, if you do actually have too much acid, it can 100% be really damaging to the gut lining and the esophagus and cause a ton of pain for people, like crazy amounts of pain where they just don't even really know what to do with themselves anymore. And that's why people are so quick to take them, because they're like, oh my God, a quick fix. Oh my God, this is so painful. Like I need to take something. But it's definitely, as I had said, like there's just such a delicate balance where you don't want too much and you most definitely don't want too little. They're both equally as dangerous.
Right. What about then, Rachel, mentally? So say, for example, you said it before, you go to the doctor, and I'm not being critical of any doctors out here. I'm not a doctor myself, but generally you go to the doctor and you're just told it's, IBS or take these probiotics or whatever it is and get on with your life. I mean, mentally, how did you feel, and how do some of your clients feel when they just hear this statement? It's like kind of like a brush off.
Mm-hmm. Defeated, frustrated, because you're like, I'm not being heard. And for me, it was like, okay, at what point does this change? Because I've been doing this for so long and nothing's changed. If anything, it's just gotten significantly worse. And it's stressful. It's stressful when you're made to think that like it's all in your head.
Yeah. And like employers or family members, I mean, what advice or suggestions do you have for them to kind of get that little bit of support? Because I'll be honest with you, there's times where I've had colleagues and they've said, I wasn't well today, but it became like a spiral. They'd be out more and more often. So it'd be like one day and then probably in for 2 days, and then they'd be out for probably 3 days, and it would continue and increase and increase. And unfortunately, some employers are not so compassionate because they probably don't understand what's going on there. I mean,
exactly it. They don't understand. And I would say for any family member is to have compassion, because the worst thing, and I've been through it, to hear is it's not that bad. It's all in your head. You're making it up. Every day is something else. Well, I know I'm living it and they're living it. Like, we don't need to be reminded of that. We almost want to be held in a sense and just heard. Like, being heard means more to someone going through something than being brushed off, because mentally it can really affect you.
Yeah.
And to feel like you're not being supported or heard by your own family when you're already not being heard by whatever professional you're seeing, it becomes like a very depressing state. So if I could give any advice to anyone who has a family member or a friend who's going through something and it seems like every day is something different, is just hold space for them, because they don't want to hear it's another day and it's always something. They want, and if you don't know what to say, just don't say anything at all. Just allow them to vent and to be heard.
Yeah. Well, what about then an employer? The reason I ask is because obviously your stress levels will go up a lot more if, for example, you're unwell and you need your income to still continue. But
I think allowing them to be flexible, like whether that means, and if available, allowing them to work from home, if that's a space that makes them feel better and they can still get their job done. And in today's world, that's very possible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think just, trying to come up with solutions together and doing your best not to get frustrated, because it's out of their control until they get the right support.
It is a stress worth it in terms of, you mentioned there previously with your dad and stuff, that high profile job, high stress. And there's obviously other individuals that are in those positions where they want to climb the ladder, and it could be a goal, it could be it could be a dream. I mean, is it worth it at the end, especially when you see some of your clients? I mean, have you had this with your clients as well, where their focus has just been on, I know criticism here again, on money and on career and a job? I mean, have they had that kind of moment where they kind of clicked and went, geez, actually, I feel better now?
I think a lot of people are so focused on career and money, honestly. And that can be sometimes part of the problem, because you're just in such this high stress state and you're not really ever taking time for you and to unwind and to bring yourself into this rest and digest state and recovery period. People are skipping out on sleep because they need to be go, go, go. And again, not beneficial for your health. Did I answer that?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay.
You did.
I was like, am I going off on a tangent here?
No, you did. So you're answering everything I ask you. No, it's just because I don't interfere with. Well, I like listening to you speak. Like with all the guests, I like them to just say what they want to say, rather than constantly interfering. So what about then? So good. I sound German there. Good health. Good health. Does it change with age, and is it dependent on your gender? Or, I mean, is a woman's digestive system different to a man's, or are we all it's all very similar?
So with age, back to stomach acid, that naturally decreases with age. So wanting to be mindful of how you feel moving forward. If, digestion seems sluggish, or you're bloating more than normal, or you're gassy more than normal, like really addressing stomach acid there, because that's something that naturally decreases as we get older. And that's inevitable. In terms of gender, obviously hormonally, we're very different. And that's the obvious,
right.
biggest difference. The two of us.
In terms of hormonally, so for women, would they have, say, more digestive or gut issues, say for menopause, for example? Would it change then, possibly?
They can, but I think that the state of your gut is also going to be a huge indicator of how, let's say, someone's going to go through menopause, because if you're backed up and you're toxic and your liver is not functioning properly and you can't metabolize your hormones properly, then the body just doesn't know what to do. And it's kind of like, oh my God, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm stressed.
Right.
But for men and women, honestly, we all have the same digestive organs. We're all made of the same things besides our reproductive organs. So I can't imagine that digestion would be any different for me than it would be for my brother, and, vice versa. And for anyone,
he won't tell you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can't see, like, we all have a stomach, we have our small intestine, our large intestine, like it's the same exact process. Yes. So the only thing, again, that's different, for example, men's hormones aren't as delicate and they can handle intermittent fasting much better than a woman can, right. Because our hormones are much more delicate. There's more at play. We're not meant to be intermittent fasting. And I'm not going to dive into that because that's not my area of expertise. And I don't want to pretend it is. I just, lightly, I can say that.
Yep.
But from a digestive standpoint, I would believe that we're all very, very, very much the same.
Very similar.
I just think that a lot of men, and this is obviously a generalization, like to push through and are, aren't as open, from my experience, with how if they're struggling.
Right.
And I find that women are more like, oh yeah, I'm bloating and this is uncomfortable. And a lot of men are like, oh, I'm gassy, I'm just going to let it rip. I don't think twice about it. Like, this is just who I am. But like, that's not normal. But they won't seek, most men won't seek help for it. And again, I'm not judging, I'm not anything. That's just what I'm noticing in my practice.
Right. Okay. that makes perfect sense. Okay, Rachel, we were chatting there about, I'm going to say very bluntly, sorry, ladies, but bodily functions and stuff like that. I mean, and men and women are quite similar. So are we looking for, like, as you mentioned, is it like loud and proud type of thing? Or does it make a difference if you hold gas in? Does this make sense?
Yes. I feel like it's funny, loud and proud, because oftentimes I remember my brother and my dad would be like, who can burp the loudest? But now that I have done the research and I've gone through the schooling, I'm like, none of this is actually normal. And it's actually nothing to be proud of. There are a lot of influencers online who will be like, bloating is normal, gas is normal. This is just all part of the human experience. And sure, maybe a little bit here and there, but like, on a daily basis, excessive gas is not normal. And it really is showing you that underneath everything, aside from the humor and all that fun stuff and entertainment, like, there's something else going on that needs to be addressed. And on the road can actually lead to bigger health concerns if we don't tackle it, when you still feel good enough to laugh about it.
And is holding it in, no matter if it's up or down, is that, like, how do you say, the body's just trying to say, look, I need to get rid of this. But
yeah, I wouldn't hold. I know that, like, a lot of us are embarrassed, but oftentimes I'm sure, I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say I've held like gas in before. You feel worse.
Right.
Gas pain is terrible. It's just, you can end up with some trapped gas. I've actually been to the hospital for that, and it's severe, severe pain. So if you ever do have gas, like, it's not pleasant, but like it is really important to let it out.
And we're human at the end of the day.
Yeah, we are human. And like I said, here and there, having a little bit of gas is normal. And it's not fair to be demonized for having gas, especially, I feel like a lot. Again, I don't want to be sexist. I don't want this to come off in the wrong way, but like a lot of men are like, oh, women don't fart or women don't poop. And like, it's just such a stupid thing to say at this point in like life.
Yes.
Like I said, we're all human. We all have the same digestive organs and we all eliminate and process and digest the exact same way. So if men do it, women are sure to do it.
Right. So there you go, ladies. Out you go. Just let it scream. Let it rip.
Just do it. However, like if that is a problem for you, then yeah, definitely call me. We have things to work on.
Right. So it's and we're going to go next step further and try. I'm going to try. I know I'm kind of like a little child here, chuckling a little bit, but how does so say for example, somebody that might have a smell off their breath, right? Now it could be dependent on food, and then if they expel from the what do we call it here? We call it a bottom burp in our bottom burp. So it's I mean, is the smell of a breath a concern, or is the bottom burp smell a concern, or is it dependent on foods? When does it become kind of serious where you kind of say, hang on a second now, you need to get this checked out?
They're all reasons to be checked out. Again, it could be just as simple as not having enough stomach acid to digest your food. But in terms of scent, a lot of different reasons, like a lot of different reasons. And I don't even know all the reasons, and I'm just being completely honest. But I do know that if there's fermentation in the gut and things are rotting, it's going to reek. Right.
So how do we then expel the rot from the intestines and the bowels? I mean, is there anything or any food you may recommend? I mean, we're going to chat about some of your services that you provide, but on the top of your head, would it be like, would you eat something like fiber, pineapples? I don't know. What would you recommend?
It's so hard because everyone is so different. At the end of the day, the reason you're fermenting is because you're not digesting. So adding more food to the picture isn't really going to be the answer. You can do a lot of killing with herbs, but really what you want is to make sure that you're digesting and eliminating properly. And that's how you're going to mitigate any of this gas and like horrific reeking gas.
Right.
If there's parasites and pathogens and candida, like those can all be killed with herbs and supplements. But adding more food to the mix when you're already feeling probably likely distended and gross is definitely not going to be the first thing that I would recommend. But maybe doing an enema is a great way to release what's being stuck in what you're holding.
Can you explain what that is? Just to listeners. Sure. I mean, what is it?
An enema is essentially, I'm not even going to sugarcoat this anymore.
Okay.
You stick a tube up your bum.
Okay.
And you allow water to fill the colon, and you sit there for a little bit, and eventually your body's going to just release everything that's sitting inside of you. So any rot and anything that if you're extremely constipated, for example, things that you're not able to pass, this is just allowing your body it's like taking a laxative,
right?
But in my opinion, it's more effective. It's very quick. It's not a whole to do. You just go in, you do it. After 15 minutes, you're out and about with your day.
And is it painful? I mean, you're saying to put this tube up your bum.
It'll be painful. It'll be painful if you let the water come in too fast. So I think the key is making sure that it's a slow and steady process. And if you feel a little bit of cramping, you just back off, or you clamp the water and you wait for the cramping to subside. Right. But otherwise it's a fairly easy, I know it sounds gross. A lot of my clients are really resistant to it at the beginning, and then they start and they're like, oh, that was way better than I thought. So that's typically the way it goes.
Right. And is this generally done like in one of these clinics, or does a doctor have to do this, or how?
No, you can do an enema at home in your bathroom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You can go into Amazon and buy enema kits. They're all over.
Right.
What you would do in a clinic is typically a colonic, which is a very different process. So they're flushing water through the system, and a professional is doing it. I personally don't want to do that, so I just do it on my own.
So you mentioned, so if you get this device and you place it up your posterior, and do you see parasites
So
coming
much
out?
more elegant than I am.
I think we know each other too well now. This is this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, do you get like, would you see parasites coming out? I mean,
if you're killing them, yes, you will. That's typically when you'll see the biggest ones come out, is through an enema.
And what are these parasites? I mean, where did they originally? I know you mentioned things like, food is rotten there, or it's stuck in the gut, or is that generally where it's from? Is it?
No, parasites you're going to get from undercooked meat or pork or raw fish or tartare or contaminated food and water, a dog or a cat licking your face, kind of everywhere.
Right. Okay.
Not necessarily from your food sitting in the gut. That's typically just going to be more like fermentation and potentially a yeast issue.
Right.
In terms of parasites, they're coming from the outside in for the most part.
And do you feel free when you do this procedure? I mean,
oh yeah, it feels great.
You skip around and kind of like, wow, I feel amazing now. And how long then would it last before you need to do another one, maybe?
Depends on the person. Like if I have someone doing a cleanse and I want them, it's a coffee enema is a great way for detox support and just, gallbladder support, everything support. I have them do it a couple times a week. Right. I would say generally, if you're like a super constipated person and you just can't go to the bathroom, doing an enema is important because you want to make sure that you're releasing. But you don't have to do an enema. You can take magnesium. Like magnesium is also a really fantastic way to get the bowels going.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's I'm gonna have a look at Amazon later on. Not for myself now, Rachel. For somebody else, not for myself.
I'm not judging either way.
You have me intrigued. You have. So one of the services that you provide is the gut rehab. So what does that involve? So let's get the sales pitch going. What does it involve?
So gut rehab is my all-encompassing program. So essentially, how I have this like 3-step process, and I support the elimination pathways first and foremost, because you can't move on with any healing protocol if your liver and kidneys are bunged up or if you're chronically constipated. Because if you can imagine, if you're dealing with, any type of pathogens or parasites and you go in and you kill them, if you're not eliminating, they're all just going to recirculate in the body and you're going to feel even worse. So right. My phase 1, first and foremost, is elimination support, drainage support, lymphatic support. Once that's done, we go into whatever your root cause is. For everyone, that's going to be different. I've been doing a lot of parasite cleansing lately, a lot of candida cleansing. And then once you've, eliminated the root of your quote unquote IBS, right. You go into the healing phase, and that's my phase 3. So that we're looking at putting in good quality bacteria. We're looking at putting in nutrients that seal the gut lining back up so that your results are permanent and not temporary. Because most often people are coming to me saying, I did this, it felt good for 3 months, and now I'm back and even worse than when I started before. And right. Oftentimes it's because we're not addressing the drainage funnel and things aren't moving properly. And I've had someone come to me saying, I'm chronically constipated. I did a candida cleanse and I've never felt worse in my entire life. Well, yeah, no kidding. You did a kill, and everything you killed is now just recirculating in the body.
Wow. It's amazing that, in this day and age, that we're still experiencing these issues. But is a lot, as you mentioned before, a lot of it's obviously stress or diet or it's fascinating stuff. But I mean, what about probiotics then? So is probiotics, are they, what's the word looking for? Is it just a good marketing thing, or do they actually work?
I think if you're getting a good quality probiotic, they're definitely worth it. Right. I often think people are misusing probiotics or taking, a lot of the doctors recommend a line. It's like a single strain probiotic. That's often not enough. Right. Multi-strain is really great. Spore-based probiotics, which are soil-based, they actually, they survive stomach acid. They get to where they need to go and colonize once they're through and in the appropriate place. Those are fantastic probiotics. So every probiotic is different. Making sure you're getting one that is of good quality. With any supplement, the cheaper it is, the worse it is. It's not like looking for a bargain deal. That's not how it works in the supplement world, unfortunately. You're right. Paying for what you get. the more you pay, like with the professional lines, the ones who put in the research and they're not backed by the pharmaceutical companies,
no comment.
You're getting a better product.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like I'm really against Western medicine.
Not at all.
I'm not. I don't want to come off that way. I think I've just been so misled, and I've seen it with my clients and with a lot of people who reach out to me, and I just feel sad. And a lot of people have to realize where I don't want to really get into this, but like where the money is going, right? And
yes. And it's a business.
It's a huge business, and the doctors are going to push that. They don't know, I asked someone, they have all of 8 hours of nutrition training in all of their medical school. So, how are they going to know what's best? I know you want to think that they know, but they don't.
Yeah.
I have 2 years of training. So it's just 8 hours to 2 years. I don't know. There's a big difference. And it's just a whole other world out there that is missing. And sometimes I think the healthcare system keeps people sick so that they can push more medications. And it's unfortunate that that's, there's so much more out there. And I want people to leave this conversation feeling like there's hope and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel for them in terms of their own healing journeys, and that if they're not being heard by their practitioner now, to find someone who does believe them when they say they're experiencing XYZ and who does honor that it's not all in their head. And I think that that's missing for a lot of people.
Oh, that's good advice. I think to do your research, whoever you are, because one thing actually you pointed out, I haven't said it yet, but you've said it a few times, but you're right. Everybody is different, and not one thing applies, you know what I mean, to everybody. So that's a credit to you. So well done. But do you think we're talking about things that make you sick? I'm actually being nosy on your website here, which is liviawellness.com. It's a popular weed killer in your food. What's that all about?
Yeah. So the EU honestly does it right. The United States and Canada, not so much. It's very heavily sprayed on our crops, and it increases drying time. It's obviously a very potent pesticide, herbicide, and it's just, it essentially, a lot of people are very sensitive to it. You're adding to your chemical and toxic load. It's virtually sprayed on everything, and it wipes out the entire gut microbiome as well. So
what is it?
It's actually the main ingredient in your weed killer Roundup.
Right. Oh, well, okay.
It's sprayed on your food, and you're consuming that left, right, and center without even knowing it.
So even though we cook, so say for example, we cook our food or boil it or whatever, that's still present, is it?
Yeah, you'll never get it off 100%.
Right.
And then even though it might be little in one meal, it's like it's the add-up effect.
Right.
Because it's not just in that meal, it's in every meal, especially if you're not buying organic. If you're buying organic, it's way better. However, there's still runoff in crops. And so you're not fully safe, but it is definitely your best option if you can afford it. 100% I would go organic, because you're going to try to mitigate exposure as best as you can.
Do you notice a difference between the organic and the general products that we buy on the shelf? I mean, does it taste better? Is it just because it's a bit healthier?
Well, it's not sprayed with all these chemicals.
Right. But does it taste, I mean, do you actually taste, I mean, I've tried a couple of organic like apples and carrots and stuff before, but I mean, have you noticed it yourself that it actually does taste a bit better, irrelevant of the health properties?
The only food I've noticed a huge difference between organic and conventional is papayas.
Papayas, right, okay. Yeah. And it's because, is it just probably a bit juicier or?
No, the taste is just insanely different.
Right. Oh, okay. No, that's interesting. It is. It's as Rachel's mentioned, with regards to the weed killer, I never knew that myself. On her Fabby website, liviawellness.com, I'm gonna say that properly. You say it, Rachel, because I think I'm saying Olivia, but it's Livia Wellness.
Livia, yeah, it's like Olivia, but Livia.
LiviaWellness.com. Great information on the website. Rachel's services, her pics. She's a blog about her background, about herself. And
And all the healing tools I have up there too under Rachel's Picks is everything I have like codes for or links for that I believe are huge, hugely helpful in propelling our healing forward.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So can I ask, what about, well, not can I ask, I'm going to ask, but do you do your services, that's a very Irish statement, do you do? I mean, are you corporate? Are you one-to-one mainly? I mean, I know it probably sounds a bit silly, but can you do it via social, like Zoom? Can you do a
I'm actually fully virtual. I'm fully virtual.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So everything is done via Zoom. So I see clients from literally all over. And I am also fully, for the most part, one-on-one, with the odd time I launch a mini group program.
Right. Cool. But you can do corporate, the whole caboodle.
I could, I just haven't.
Right. Corporate companies, get out there now. You need to look after the wellness of your staff. Get in touch with Rachel ASAP. So where are you, on the world of social media? Are you on the Facebooks and the LinkedIn's and all that type of stuff? So for people to get in touch, what is the best place to get in touch with you?
Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram, for sure. And my email list, they're heavily nourished as well.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm not so active on Facebook. I have a LinkedIn profile. I don't use it a heck of a lot, but again, I still have it. So it's honestly whatever's most convenient for someone else. I have it all.
Cool. So all that's left me to say, thanks so much to Rachel Kalmar for chatting with me today on the Wellbeing and Career World podcast. When the podcast has been approved, I'll put all the links in for Rachel's social media, her website, liveyourwellness.com, and you can get in touch and reach out, especially you corporate clients. Get in touch with her, especially now. So thanks so much, Rachel, for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.